So let me start by asking you, realistically speaking, would you be okay with taking on c4 in this position? And of course, pause the video if you need to. Pretend like you're actually playing this in the game. Would you take on c4 knowing that this king is in the center, the pieces are not fully developed? How would you deal with this position? Now, most likely, you look into this position, you realize, well, after bishop c4, pawn takes c4, knight takes e4, they're going to go knight e7 and castle right away. There's nothing for me, so probably you wouldn't go down that route. Let's not even talk about if you consider this move or not, right? Well, I want you to really do put some effort, and let's try to do this in our head. Really visualize the move bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes, and then knight c4. If you realize that after knight takes d6, queen d6, this bishop could go to a3, hitting the queen, putting pressure on the knight, this starts to get more interesting. So after bishop a3, the queen goes back, then I'm going to put more pressure on the knight. The knight is pinned on the king is in the center. How can they defend it? Well, maybe knight to c6. And now, if you visualize that position, you could use it. You could use the stepping stone method. Visualize that position and then treat it as a brand new position. How can I put more pressure? How can I attack? And you should think of the move pawn to d5, threatening d6. So if you see this far and you evaluate the position, your intuition should tell you go for it. And that's exactly what happened in this game. So let's go from the very beginning. And this game came out of the French defense. So you have two very strong players, d4, d5. And I remember reviewing this game many years ago because when I first started learning my openings, I used to play as the white pieces. I used to play e4. And against the French defense, I used to play knight d2. Why? Well, as you already know, I started late. I wanted to simplify my opening preparation. And I didn't want to get into knight c3 because of these lines with bishop b4. I didn't want to learn so many lines, right? So with knight d2, bishop b4 is out of the picture because c3 takes care of it. So after a6, interesting line, and this is the reason why I was asked to review this game, because the black pieces basically want to play c5 without having to worry about bishop b5, right? So a6, also it could help with the queen side expansion. It makes a lot of sense. So knight f3, pawn to c5, and now we have e takes d5 opening up the center already, right? So e takes back, and now bishop goes to e2. Very simple chess, trying to develop our minor pieces, trying to castle, and of course going to d3 would run into bishop c4. So after bishop e2, we got pawn to c4 anyways, and now we start to see moves that at the very least should make you think, okay, how come my opponent is moving another pawn here? I already developed three minor pieces. I'm about to castle, and my opponent continues to move pawns. So this cannot be right. Anyways, after c4, not much we could do other than castling and getting ready to bring the rook over. And then we have bishop d6. Developing move, it makes sense. But like I already said, my opponent's king is in the center, and my pieces are way ahead in development. So if you were playing this as white, how can we start taking advantage of this? What move, what plan would be consistent with the evaluation of this position? Well, if you said rook e1, I understand, it's logical, but after knight e7, there's not much for us. So one move away from castling, and then all of this is going to be justified. So instead, Geller decided to play pawn to b3. I'm going to start putting pressure already, and the more pressure I put, the more I make you to react to my threats, the longer it's going to take for your king to go ahead and castle. At this point, the black pieces played pawn to b5, expanding, gaining more space. It makes a lot of sense. However, it was better to simply take and continue with knight e7. b5 at the end of the day is another pawn move. This is move number 8, and the black pieces have only one minor piece developed. Now, at the same time, there's this psychological element where taking on b3 would be the equivalent of trading a powerful pawn that is gaining space, a pawn that was already invested time into to get to c4. trading this pawn for this pawn that has not even moved, right? Takes, takes, this one is gone, my A pawn went to B3. So psychologically, it's difficult to make that move. Plus, you're opening up the A rook. So for that reason, we have pawn to B5 and now pawn to A4. We continue to be energetic. We continue to open up the position. And again, the more I do this, the longer it will take for them to develop, to put the king in safety. So after A4, we have bishop B7, and now B takes E4, B takes E4, and this is the position that I showed you at the very beginning. Please keep in mind, this rook E1 is always in the air, but that move in itself is not as good as knight E7. You're not going to accomplish much by playing rook E1. They're going to accomplish a lot, and they're going to be ready to simply castle to the king side. So that's why when we look at this position, we know we have to have something. We look at the candidate moves, we look at the checks, captures, and threats. So this is one candidate move, 2, 3 candidate moves. Now, we're going to do it one more time in our head. Imagine bishop C4, pawn takes E4, knight takes E4. I'm threatening knight takes bishop, queen takes, bishop A3, and then I put a lot of pressure on that king in the center. There's only so much you can calculate. You really have to trust your intuition. How do you do that? Well, the more you review games like this, the more you train in your tactics, the easier it will be for you to go along and play like this. Maybe out of 10 games, you lose 2 or 3 because of this. Fine. That's the price of playing good chess. This is how you learn, right? So anyways, after B takes E4, bishop takes E4, D takes E4, knight takes E4, and the black piece has now played bishop E7. And from this moment on, it's all about being energetic. One reason why I chose this game is because you're not gonna see like forcing sacrifices, the perfect game. It's not gonna be like that. At this moment, it's good enough for us to understand that the king is stuck in the center, they're behind in development. The best thing we could do is be as energetic as possible. So the next move for white was rook to E1 now, pinning the bishop on the king. Then queen goes to C7, putting pressure on our knight. And now pause the video and think of what you'd play next. Be honest with yourself. You're playing this in a tournament game. How would you continue? Well, the move that they played here is a very interesting one. The move is actually rook B1. Even though I sacrificed my bishop for only 2 pawns, these 2 pawns are powerful central pawns, and I get the open files for my rooks. So after rook B1, I'm saying if you take my knight, I'm going to collect the bishop. Rook on the 7th rank, very powerful. Also, I'm threatening to go knight B6 right now. So this is very comfortable to play as the white pieces. And at the end of the day, this D5, D6 is always in the air. So after rook B1, the black pieces decided to just take on C4. Honestly, there's not much more to do. With threatening, rook takes B7, queen takes knight D6 because of the pin. Already active pieces, tactics are gonna be in the air. So instead, queen takes E4, then rook takes B7, and then knight to C6. Now, this is another critical moment in the game. We know that we have to be better. And if you look at the eval, notice how the evaluation is 1.68, even though we're down a piece. Now, I can see myself messing this up very easily. So that's why, again, it's important that we put in the training and we get the hang of playing in these kind of positions. So after rook b7, knight c6, when I was reviewing this game, I asked myself, what would I play in this position? The move that came to mind was actually rook c7. I'm thinking to myself, I'm pinning the knight, I'm threatening to play d5 after, or knight e5. In the comments of the game, they were explaining how bishop a3 is not good. Very natural, not good. I have to be honest, I didn't even consider it. I looked at rook c7 and I liked it, which happens to be a good move, but bishop a3, I didn't even consider it. Now, the problem with bishop a3, in case you thought of that move, is that the black pieces could castle queenside. It looks impossible, but it's always in the air. Now, the rook is being attacked, the bishop is being attacked. And even though you're not going to be losing, well, honestly, there is not much here for you. Like if you just go down this route, you're down on exchange and forget about the attack on the black king, right? And I think there was another interesting line with queen b1, but after bishop a3, queen b6, bishop d6, it's not as easy to attack that king now. So instead of bishop a3, instead of rook c7, in the game, Geller played a very powerful move. And I honestly, I'm saying powerful because a lot of us don't think of these kind of moves when we are attacking. And the move is actually a knight jump backwards. It's so difficult for us to think of the knights jumping backwards. It's so difficult for us to be in this attacking position and then think of going back, right? It psychologically is not that easy, but it actually makes a lot of sense here. Knight d2, trying to put these pawns in motion. For example, queen takes a4, d5 is already happening. If queen d5, c4, followed by d5, and of course, if they take, this is exactly what we needed to activate this bishop. The bishop has been here waiting for the right moment to get activated. But after queen takes d4, well, bishop b2, and my bishop is in the game. Now, after queen a4, the white pieces continued with a very bad move, which is rook e4. And you can see how the eval goes all the way from 2 points actually, all the way to 0.0. And again, this is why I said this is a very realistic game. I can see myself making this mistake. It's so difficult to be consistent throughout, right, from beginning to end. So rook e4, even though it's not the best move in this position, it is so difficult. If it's difficult to find the right attacking move, it is even tougher to find the right defensive moves. And indeed, here the black pieces, instead of playing the powerful move queen a5, trying to play castle queenside and put pressure on the knight, they went queen a2. Now, you might be asking, what was the better move instead of rook e4? Well, a move that any of us would have played, which is bishop g7. So natural. I'm gonna get the material back. That king is still in the center, exposed, even if they go to the queen side. But sometimes we just ignore these simple moves. So rook e4, queen a2 was played, bishop g7. I'm getting the material back, and the king is still exposed. Castle queenside, but then after rook b3, all of our pieces are safe, active, and I'm getting this rook no matter what. Bishop f6, and then after queen g4, king c7, queen f4 check, putting pressure on f6, the game is already very easily won by the white pieces. Let me just show you the final move. After queen f6, we have queen takes c2, and then see if you can find the best continuation at this point. Simple tactic, and the move is queen to f5 check, but also getting on the same diagonal as the hanging queen. So once the king moves, we're going to do a discovered check. Let's say they go rook d7, check, and give me the queen. If instead they go king c7, of course, check, and we collect the queen. Very simple game, nothing extraordinary maybe other than that powerful sacrifice on c4, but I really wanted to show it to you because you can never get enough of these kind of games. How do we attack the king? It's the most important thing in chess, and we can never get enough of it. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I will see you in our next video.